This is Greg Bateman with a very, very special guest. Of course, this is Loogootee Barr-Reeve weekend, and familiar face, familiar name joining us, Joe Todrank, the coach of the Barr-Reeve Vikings and Southridge Raiders, Holland, and Monroe City, I believe, as well. Coach, to put it lightly, I guess you kind of made the rounds when you were down here, but we'd love for you, if you can, to talk about your time at Barr-Reeve for just a little bit. When you talk about those times, and you were here a couple of stints, what's the first memories that come to your mind?
Well, I went to Barr-Reeve in the fall of 1966, and of course, at that time, Barr-Reeve it was their second year of consolidation, and they were in the middle of a not so good streak. I think they had lost something like 10 straight consecutive seasons, and so it was an opportunity for me to go in there to find out if I could coach. And it didn't take long to find out that Barr-Reeve did have some talent, and that there was a rival school about 6 miles to the east that was pretty good.
So I know Coach Albert Kavanaugh likes to credit you with reviving the program twice. What is it you think that you were able to do, at least with the people around you, to revive the Barr-Reeve program? Of course, today it's just flourishing, but back then, as you said, it was kind of on the low level, and you got it going a couple of times. What was it that you were able to do to be successful in that way?
Well, probably several things. Number one was extremely hard work. Not only myself, but the kids. We were practicing for several hours a day. And then also, I think that just starting with the very, very basics in the fundamental parts of the game, which I've always tried to emphasize a lot more than the X's and O's of the game. And I think between those two things, and I'll tell you what, we had some kids at Barr-Reeve that wanted to win, and they wanted to compete. And so it was a fairly easy job because they were willing to put in the time, and they took constructive criticism very well.
And finally, in 1980, after several years of being close, competitive, your ball club down at Barr-Reeve won their first sectional. That certainly had to be a highlight of your career.
Well, it was. I think that we paid our dues, and it was our time. And a lot of people during that particular year, Loogootee had a great ball club, and that's the year that probably the greatest upset in the history of the Washington sectional occurred whenever Washington Catholic beat Loogootee. And then, of course, we handled Washington Catholic in the championship game. So a lot of people say we backed into it, but we'll take it.
You had other coaching stints, of course. You were the coach for the last season at Holland High School and the first coach at Southridge, but I really didn't know that you coached at Monroe City. And I see in a little resume that I looked up that you were 25-3 at one point, runner-up, finishing 83 team 1963 Wabash Valley Tournament. So taking a small school like that to such a great record, it's just very difficult to do today. Why back then was it something that you were able to be successful with?
Well, first of all, back in 63, there was probably still close to 700 schools in the state. It was prior to consolidation. And the Wabash Valley Tournament still had probably close to 90 teams that competed. But at Monroe City, here again, they had really wonderful talent, and Monroe City had a history of winning. I came in there, and I didn't do anything special because they had some really, really fine ball clubs and some good athletes prior to me coming. I kind of fell into it, and I told a couple of my players that played on that 63 team that I think you guys won the 25, and I think I lost 3.
It's interesting, though, Monroe City being such a small school and Holland where you played and you had a lot of success. Back then in those days, it must have just been euphoric for the small schools. I mean, it was the thing to do, to go to the games, right? And then to have success, it just must have been just a terrific time in those towns.
That's true, Greg. Back in that time, boys basketball was the only thing to do in your small communities. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have the girls' sports, and so almost every small community, the community still revolved around the school. And, of course, with consolidations anymore today, that's not the case, except it still is the case, I think, in Loogootee and at Barr-Reeve, and that's what makes it such a great rivalry.
Well, we mentioned a lot of the things that you've done as far as coaching and where you were, but also a tremendous basketball player at Oakland City University and all those things that we've talked about. And one thing you told me to do, Coach, to stay away from is to mention things where you're patting yourself on the back because you're not comfortable. But now's the time that I get to congratulate you for becoming an inductee into the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame coming up this March. Congratulations on that. I think with the likes of Damon Bailey and Calbert Cheney, whenever you got that call, that had to be a thrill for you.
Well, it certainly was a thrill. Very humbly honored, I might say. I wasn't necessarily expecting it, but it certainly is gratifying. Because like I told you earlier today, Greg, when you receive recognition, you should always pass the credit. And that's, with me getting this nice honor, you reflect back to the coaches, the teachers, the players, your teammates, and then, of course, the kids that you had the privilege of coaching all these years. The recognition there is passing the credit and giving credit where it's due. You're only a small part. Basketball is a team sport, and one person's only a small part of the success.
And you also mentioned to me today a part of it might have been that Coach 6 miles to the east where you guys pushed each other. Coach Butcher, who had quite an honor, of course, this month as well. But I know you guys are great friends, but certainly were great competitors.
Well, Greg, that is true. And, it didn't take an Einstein to figure out if you look 6 miles to the east of the tremendous success that Jack and Loogootee had, you better slip over there occasionally and see some games and try to emulate some of the things that they were doing well. And I did, and Jack and I did become friends, although we didn't share many secrets with each other. That was left for between the lines. And we were good friends, and I can tell you a lot of stories about Jack and I as the years go by. Let me tell you one real quick.
Sure.
That is, and I don't recall what year, but Loogootee beat Barr-Reeve in the final game of the sectional. And after I congratulated Jack, I was walking off the floor towards our locker room, and here come Rita down the steps onto the floor, and she gave me a big hug. I don't know if she realized who she was hugging, but it's not very often that the winning coach's wife hugs a losing coach.
Well, she's quite the lady, and you know that probably better than I.
I love her. She's a great lady, and she's had to put up with a lot these years dealing with Jack. Take that the way it sounds.
Okay, I will. Coach, update the folks. You left high school basketball here in Indiana. Where did you go? What have you been up to? How did you land in Las Vegas, Nevada?
Well, in 1954, a college a friend of mine was the superintendent at Cody, Wyoming. And he offered me it's called the activities coordinator out there. It's kind of a glorified athletic director's job, but you're in charge of all the activities. It was a substantial monetary increase in salary, so I decided to take it. And I went out there and I stayed until 1999, 15 years, and fell in love with the West. And then we retired in Las Vegas in 2000, and we certainly have enjoyed our retirement in Las Vegas because here again, Greg, a lot of people want to visit Vegas, and we've had over 600 different people that has called, knocked on our door, went out to dinner with over the past 16 years. And it's, I've even had some mothers and dads of kids that didn't get to play too much for me call me.
That's fantastic.
And, I didn't think they liked me much back then, but once I moved to Vegas, the friendship grew.
Absolutely. That's coincidence, isn't it? Well, let me ask you about today. The Barr-Reeve Vikings, of course, the defending state champions. They've been so good now for so long. In fact, you were, of course, the winningest high school coach in Barr-Reeve history till a young man by the name of Brian Hughes came along, and he's been pretty successful himself. Are you able to follow them at all last year, particularly during the run or the last couple of years? Have you been able to keep up with them?
Yes, Greg, I spend a lot of time on the computer. I don't think that I'm computer literate, but I'm a little ways from computer illiterate. So I do follow them, the IHSAA website. I follow games. When I watched them play Clay City last year, and then I also watched them play in a state championship game. I got to see them play the Hatchets this year on the computer. So I follow them as much as I possibly can. I'm a Barr-Reeve fan, and I was a Dave Omer fan, and I'm also a big Brian Hughes fan. But here again, I'm sure that Brian would be the first to admit that the program there is stronger than any one individual person.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, we appreciate the time that you spent with us. We talked earlier about an interview we had several years ago now with you and Coach Omer and Coach Butcher, and that to this day is probably my most enjoyable interview because I didn't have to do a thing. Just listen to you guys talk about the past, and I enjoy that so much. And I enjoy talking to you tonight, and really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Well, Greg, you're more than welcome. And like I said, the Loogootee Barr-Reeve rivalry is good because, here again, there's so much interrelationship there over the years. One of Loogootee's all-time great players is now the principal of Barr-Reeve, and I'm sure that he feels the same way that a lot of people do. He's for Loogootee, except when they play Barr-Reeve.
All right, Coach. That's the 2016 inductee into the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, Coach Joe Todrank from Las Vegas. Thanks, Coach.
You're welcome, Greg.